Welcome to the Making More Possible podcast. I'm Keisha Jackson.
And I'm Wendy Ditmore, and we're your hosts. Each episode, we'll be joined by leaders from our International Association of Microsoft Channel Partners, the Black Channel Partner Alliance, and Microsoft to have an open discussion about allyship, addressing underrepresentation of Black and African Americans within the tech community, how to inspire new tech leaders, and how we're all working to drive change within our communities, both near and far. We are extremely grateful and really excited to welcome our next guest, Corporate Vice President of One Commercial Partner, Gavriella Schuster. Thank you for joining us, Gavriella.
Oh, well, thank you for having me, both of you, Wendy and Keisha.
Awesome. We're going to jump right into this discussion, and we know you have a lot of great insights to share. You've been a strong voice for diversity and inclusion, specifically around gender equity in technology. In fact, you recently gave a really awesome TEDx talk. Can you share a little bit more about the Invisibility Cloak that you shared and your Become framework?
Sure. The invisibility cloak is this. Have you ever had the experience where you said something in a group or even one-on-one and you felt like it wasn't heard at all? Like there was no register of like that you actually said something? To me, that's the invisibility cloak. And I've had this experience more often than I would like to say throughout my career and even recently. And while in Harry Potter's experience, this was a symbol of empowerment, for me, it's just the opposite. It feels like I am very disempowered, that I am not being recognized, and it's frustrating. And so I developed this framework to really encourage people to take the steps necessary to step into allyship, to understand what that means, to step into a leadership position where you're advocating for the voice of everyone in the room, and to really become agents of change. Because if we stay the way we are, this status quo just disempowers so many of us in that are, not part of the majority, to not be heard, to not be seen, and doesn't encourage us to be authentic. So, the framework is all about the steps each of us can take to remove that cloak of invisibility for ourselves and for someone else, and some very tactical actions that we can all take. And there's really 4 steps to it, right? One is connection, creating connection, and that is all about creating access for people, bringing them into your network, introducing them to people, giving them validation through that connection. The second step is outreach, and that is about taking active steps in the way that you recruit, hire, and build out supplier diversity, and really making sure that as you're hiring people, that you are actively looking for diversity and making that part of the process, so that you are not screening people out of the process, you are screening them into the process. The third step is about mentorship, which is critical because people need to learn from those who have been successful and learn from each other's failures. So being a mentor, helping somebody to understand your experiences, your lived experiences, what you would have done differently, how you've gotten through what you have, how you've created success and turned maybe lemons into lemonade, and really being the trailblazer for those that follow you and sharing that experience, critical. And then the fourth step is around empowering people. And this is about really helping people to be seen and be heard. In allyship, it is about making sure that you are supporting and echoing and hearing and listening to what each and every person has to say, and encouraging people to speak up and encouraging them to become part of the conversation. That's empowering. When you can give voice to people who did not have a voice before, or whose voice was ignored before. You are empowering them, and you are empowering everyone in that conversation to speak up and to come forth with their ideas. And ultimately, when you do that, you create more powerful ideas. When there's multiple voices, multiple perspectives, and people are bringing their true lived experiences into the dialogue, then the ideas and the direction that you build is that much more powerful and that much stronger. And there's a lot of data to back that up. Relative to organizations that have diverse leadership teams, they are far more profitable because of the diversity in their leadership team. And so, that's really why I built this, is to give people really tactical actions that they can take to really make a difference.
Thank you for sharing that, Gavriella. I hope that our audience is noticing that the Become framework marches right along with those 4 tenets that you just spoke to. And they can see that in the notes for this podcast as well. So the Become framework can be applied to all communities. How do you see this in reference to Microsoft's commitment to addressing racial injustice?
Well, so I think there are many steps that we need to take as a nation, from policy to process to interpersonal. And this framework really falls into the interpersonal. It extends out to embracing and fostering diversity at all levels across all dimensions. And taking those 4 actions, really thinking about your network and how do you extend your network and actively pull people into your network and give them access to you and to others in your network. So those 4 actions really apply across any level of diversity and any level of marginalized communities, where you can give voice to people, you can create credibility, you can be an ally, and that will drive change. However, there's a great deal more that we need to do to address the core of equity in our system, way beyond just the interpersonal, but it does start with people.
Awesome. Totally agree. It has to start with people. And, and speaking of people, your team and our team really have been doing a lot of work to help Microsoft partner organizations understand the value of diversity and inclusion from a business perspective. It'd be great if you could talk a little bit about the opportunity around being contributors to that inclusive economy, and specifically for those who don't know, what it means to have an inclusive economy.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, because the word sounds great, but a lot of people don't really understand what it means. So, an inclusive economy is an economy that's built on participation, equity, growth, stability, and sustainability, right? So you want to bring everyone into the fold. You want to give voice to everyone, and then you want to focus on how you create that growth in a sustainable way and really drive that stability. It's a framework where inclusive growth strategies lead to shared prosperity, especially for communities facing the greatest barriers to equal social participation. So let me give you an example to try and make it real. For 3 million people in East Africa, kerosene was the main source of energy. But kerosene is dangerous. It costs a lot of money, and it isn't very efficient for actually producing electricity. That's why we don't use it in most of the world. That's where Microsoft partner Mcopa Solar came in. They developed an IoT solution that brings the power of solar energy, clean, sustainable energy, into their homes. The solution is built on Microsoft Azure. It gives the families access to lighting, phone charging, radio, and TV for just 50 cents a day, the same amount they had paid for lighting alone with kerosene. And it's much safer. So that solution has tapped into a whole new market opportunity. That family is now plugged in, literally, to the economy that they were on the outside before. That's the participation. And they're plugged in a sustainable way. The partner organization, Mcopa Solar, is bringing the digital divide and unlocking economic potential of 3 million people, enabling them to become part of our global economy. That's what we want. We want to do everything we can at Microsoft to enable organizations like that to contribute in the same way, to really unlock their ideas on how do you create sustainable support, create an inclusive economy, really create an economy where everyone can participate. And that's the idea behind the channel inclusion framework. that leaders on my team have all been working on, that you have all been working on, right? And the idea is that we have a very powerful ecosystem at Microsoft. And we have the opportunity to ignite the passion of these partnerships so that they start looking at the world in a different frame and looking at how they can create solutions that will bring more people in the world into the digital economy and create a more sustainable platform that creates the future.
That's awesome. Gavriella, will you share more ideas behind the channel inclusion framework and the guiding principles?
Sure. So there are really 5 principles, right? One is about building for impact. The second is about driving an inclusive economic growth. The third is about differentiating with purpose. The fourth is about enabling a diverse and inclusive partner ecosystem. And the fifth is about harnessing collective action, which we just talked about at our Women in Cloud Summit. So let me go back and talk about each one of those. When we talk about building for impact, it's about empowering the partner with the technology, the digital skilling, and the enablement to build technology that is inclusive, trusted, and sustainable, like mCOPA Solar. Then driving that inclusive economic growth is about working with partners to capture that market opportunity that drives inclusive economic growth in the solution area, in the industry, and in the customer segments in which they serve. So looking out at your community and saying, what are those solutions that are needed here that will actually drive participation in the digital economy? And how do I start meeting those solutions in the industry and the customer segments in which I serve? And then it's about differentiating with purpose. So really being intentional and enabling our partner to lead with that purpose and seize the competitive advantage that helps that purpose-driven solution and services that they can create space for them to really be differentiated and to really have a focus and a purpose, which changes dramatically actually the way that their employees will engage and actually the way their customers will engage with them. When you're leading an organization that's purpose driven, you go beyond the revenue, you go beyond the market opportunity, and you actually then have a higher purpose that you are serving and you see the value. The other things follow. The fourth thing is about enabling a diverse and inclusive partner ecosystem. You can't really build for these multiple dimensions of diversity and inclusion without having a diverse population yourself, without really understanding and having voices in your organization that are sharing their lived experiences and giving you an alternative way of thinking about the world and seeing what those opportunities are. So when you enable a diverse and inclusive partner ecosystem, that amplifies the diverse voices and represents the world. And it enables you to unlock the value of what some of these new solutions and alternative solutions might be. And then we need to harness our collective power, harnessing collective action, working with all of our partners in all of our communities around the world to join in collective action to realize this vision. There is strength in numbers. Acting together with a purpose and a mission will really change and reverse and destroy that status quo and enable us to all become change agents and enable all of us to become leaders and allies.
Mm. I love the idea of change agents, and it's very inspiring. There were two guiding principles that you were walking through that really stick out to me as they kind of relate to our new Black and African American Partner Growth Initiative, and those were driving inclusive economic growth and then also enabling a diverse partner ecosystem. Perhaps you could share a bit about the Black and African American Partner Growth Initiative and how the idea was born.
Well, we started on this on this path to create better diverse ecosystem probably about a year and a half ago. But then with the recent events that were occurring within the United States, we wanted to do something. We wanted to do something bolder, something that would be accelerated. We needed to do something to address the racial injustice that is really occurring within our country. So last June, we took a look inside our own ecosystem and recognized that we have work to do to address underrepresentation of Black and African American owned businesses within our partner ecosystem. So it's not just about every partner having diversity within their organization, but to actually lift up and invest more into those businesses that are owned by Black and African American individuals in the tech industry. And so this is a core pillar as a part of our broader effort to address racial injustice. So we've stood up a program to help guide new and existing partners through the Microsoft Partner Network to ensure that they're unlocking key resources and connections that will help aid in their business growth. And we've put real dollars behind that in terms of supporting them with loan initiatives as well. And as we think about the work that we're doing, it ladders directly back to driving inclusive economic growth and enabling a diverse partner ecosystem.
It's amazing. It's so inspiring to work for a company like Microsoft and to see the work that we're doing and to know that this company is really committed to doing good, not just in the United States, but across the globe. And so thank you for sharing that initiative. Can you share some of the goals related to this initiative?
Sure. So we're looking to grow our Black and African American owned representation within our ecosystem by 20% over the next 3 years. It's important to remember that we're only 6 months into this multi-year initiative. Our goal is to make a sustainable change within the next 5 years, and to really, I believe success breeds success. So, once we start building on that community, bringing people in, we will drive more organizations and more individuals to take a bet on Microsoft, to take a bet on technology, and to take a bet on themselves in actually starting that business and jumping into the tech industry. It can be very intimidating, but when there is a community there to support you, when there are programs there to support you, it becomes less intimidating. And that's what we're all about: creating access, creating pathways, and creating community.
That's fantastic. That is, I think you you really hit the, what is the phrase, the nail on the hammer on the nail's head, or whatnot. We just really appreciate you taking the time to speak to this very important topic and initiative. It shows that Microsoft leadership is really committed to diversity, equity, inclusion, and particularly as it pertains to Black and African American tech entrepreneurs. And so this has been a very important conversation. Gavriella, we thank you for joining us today, sharing your insights, your expertise. Your perspective is always greatly appreciated.
Well, it's my pleasure, absolutely, to speak to you, to speak to everyone who's listening, and to really encourage everyone to think about how you personally can make a difference.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you so much, Gabriella. And for all of our listeners here, make sure to join us bi-weekly as we discuss how to make more possible through allyship, through addressing underrepresentation of Black and African Americans within our partner ecosystem, and by inspiring our future tech leaders. So thank you very, very much.